Welcome to the Carrie Barrett Show, the go-to podcast for leaders. Are you a founder, executive, or part of a dynamic team? Then you're in the right place. I'm Carrie Barrett, your on-camera confidence, public speaking, and delivery coach. Each week, we dive into practical tips, insightful interviews, and engaging stories to help you communicate with confidence and lead with impact. Whether you're in the boardroom or on the physical or digital stage, this podcast will help you elevate your presence. Let's get started.
You know, it's funny, Donna and I were talking a little bit before the show as I was rushing around like a lunatic. And she's like, "You're wearing a turtleneck. You always say not to wear turtlenecks." I wasn't wearing it. I wanted to wear a turtleneck and I didn't wear one today because I listened to you. And I appreciate that. I'm also on this sort of tail end of COVID and not feeling my best and still have a little bit of a fever. So I'm bundled up today. But Donna, thank you for recognizing that. And yes, this is one of those days where it's a do as I say, not as I do sort of situation. It is tough sometimes knowing how to show up and how to look our very best on camera. But you're on LinkedIn regularly and you do it really well.
Thank you. Thank you. And I gotta say, I try very hard. It's not one of those things that you dabble in, you know, it's something that you kind of have to jump in with both feet. And certainly you can do it effectively and efficiently, and you don't have to commit 100%, but it is one of those things where I think just like if you're going to look good on video, there is an element of you've got to commit and you've got to invest and you got to work at it.
Yeah. It's not one of those things where you can sort of stick your big toe in and test the waters, maybe once or twice. But then I think with any sort of business endeavor or any perhaps a new learning opportunity or, you know, your next growth step, it's always a matter of you figure out a little bit the basics, like maybe you know where the pull cord is on the parachute, but then you got to jump in with both feet.
Kind of, you know, stick that big toe in and just, test the temperature. Yeah. But then let's jump in.
You got it. Otherwise, it's that whole paralysis by analysis thing. And perhaps that's another episode for another day. I'm excited to talk to you today about LinkedIn profile optimization. And first of all, before we even get into specifically why that's important, what exactly does that mean? Because there are a lot of people who have LinkedIn profiles and you can, scroll through your LinkedIn feed and probably see 50% of them who haven't done it exactly right. Maybe it's just, I'm a CEO and they're not really describing what they do, or their profile picture is not the right picture, or their background is wasted real estate. Can you talk a little bit about what specifically you mean when you say LinkedIn profile optimization? Yeah. What is that?
At one time with LinkedIn, it was just profiles. There was not this news feed. There was not that LinkedIn feed. It was purely a database of people and later of companies as well. It's different now. And thank goodness for that, because it really does give a much, much deeper ability to network and to show up and to be active on the platform. But at the most foundational level, there is the profile. And, when you get active on LinkedIn, whether it's through commenting on people's posts or posting and showing up, or, maybe just direct messaging or taking some LinkedIn learning courses or just recommending. And there's so many different ways of getting active on LinkedIn, but ultimately it all comes back down to how are you representing yourself? And at that foundational level, it's your LinkedIn profile. And when we look at that profile, it's so much more robust than any of the other profiles that are out there. So you look at Facebook, you look at X, you look at Instagram, get a couple characters to really define yourself. You don't get a lot. Basically, it's a tagline on all the other platforms. But on LinkedIn, you can really dive in and show your trajectory, show your history, and really, tell people who you are and what you do, what you represent, what you stand for. But that's something that very few people do because it's hard to write about ourselves. Yeah. It's really hard. So when I talk about LinkedIn profile optimization, what I'm talking about is how How are you controlling and owning your narrative? And how are you presenting yourself and making sure that how people perceive you is how you want to be perceived?
So it sounds to me almost like your LinkedIn profile serves, for lack of a better term, almost like a mini landing page where you can convert people who may be interested in learning more about what you do or who you are into an opportunity for them to, whatever your call to action is, make a call, check out your website, you download a PDF or some resource that you offer, and it's actually bringing them into your network. It's not just there for a picture and to put a name with a face. There's a lot more that you can do with it. And LinkedIn's constantly rolling out new opportunities in your profile as well, from features to hot links and all, top voice and communication or public speaking. There's a lot of opportunities to really sell yourself. What are the biggest mistakes or maybe the biggest missed opportunities that you see people making on the regular?
I think one of the biggest mistakes is one, they don't give it the time and they don't even recognize the value. But where I was going with this is, I think one of the big issues is really they don't see the value. They don't understand that people are checking them out. People are using this to really determine, is this someone that I can trust? Is this someone that I can like? Is this someone I want to work with? Is this someone that I want to reach out to? How can I learn from them? Do they have something to say? So these are all really important points, and it's up to you to tell that story. So what do most people do? One, they ignore it. Two, they copy and paste an old bio or their old about section from their company. They're just copying and pasting an out-of-date, dull resume. And none of these things truly align to their goals on the LinkedIn platform. And that's the big issue, is they're presenting themselves in a way that's actually contrary or counter to what they're really hoping to achieve from LinkedIn.
How do you go about, I know that one of the elements you talk about, or some of the things you talk about, aside from the maybe more granular things of picking the right photo or describing yourself in the right way, are really the storytelling opportunity and using story as well to build a personal brand that is specific to LinkedIn. How do we, tell me more about the storytelling aspect of it, because I think that really underscores what you're talking about in terms of people discovering who you are, wondering if you're somebody they would like to work with. Is this somebody I should reach out to? How do I know that I can trust them? Can you weave all of those pieces together for us?
Yeah. Well, so when I think of LinkedIn, right, the first thing most people do is they just say, oh, all right, let me get on. Let me get on and let me just start. I'll just jump in and splash around and see what happens. Yeah. But before you do that, you really have to say to yourself, what am I trying to accomplish? Like, am I doing this for prospecting and sales? Am I doing this for thought leadership? Am I doing this because I want to network with my colleagues? Am I doing this because I'm looking for a job? Maybe I'm doing this because I need more clients and I want to be seen as an expert. Like, all of these are very valid points. And you may have a couple of them, or you may have something totally different, but you need to know what you're trying to accomplish. That's going to help you understand the story to tell. Then you need to think in terms of who is your target audience. Who do you plan on reaching? You're not going to spray and pray here. You're not going to aim low and wide. There's a very specific client or person or avatar. There is an audience out there that you want to hear your message. Who are these people and what do they need to know about you? What is really the most important things for them to know? And that, again, is another way of really taking and telling the right story. The other thing here is we all want to collide with opportunity, right? I mean, all of us, no one wants to look for a job. We want jobs to land in our laps. No one wants to prospect. We want leads and clients to just land in our lap. We don't want to have to do anything. We want to attract these things like a magnet, right? Well, if you want to attract these things like a magnet, you've got to figure out, well, how can I collide with these people when they need me? How can they remember to knock on my door when they've got that need for my services, my abilities, whatever it might be? And the way you do that is, one, you need to know the keywords that they're going to search, because more often than not, they're not going to know your name. Maybe they will. And if they know your name, great. That's really fabulous. But a lot of times they don't know your name. And so what are they putting into the search engine? Like, what are they searching for?
Right.
If you can make sure those keywords are part of your story, you're going to be more apt to turn up higher in the searches. And when they look at the search results and they see something that sparkles, that shines, that has like a warmth, as opposed to all of the other profiles that are showing up on that search results page, that where they look like they're overly selling, or they look like they're not trying at all, or it just looks so dull and boring. The thought of even looking at it is a little painful. And so that is what's going to start to allow the opportunities to come to you, because you want to show up like a real person. And Carrie, I think that's a really important part of all of this, because we are like all speed ahead, heading into a world just full of AI. And I think what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to differentiate ourselves. We have to differentiate ourselves as human beings.
Agreed.
And that's going to be part of this, is telling those stories, showing that you're real, showing that you care, because AI doesn't care.
It is interesting. And you mentioned a couple of seconds ago the importance of showing up as yourself. And you talked about, not looking like you're overly selling, or that you're not trying at all, or that you're sort of tired and stale. And I do think one of the challenges of social media, especially LinkedIn, where we do feel perhaps a harder boundary than we might feel on Instagram or TikTok to sort of fit into this box that is representative of our industry as a whole, especially if we are in perhaps a more traditional or stoic industry, insurance, finance, et cetera. It can be really scary to step outside of the box. We are used to being buttoned up, and perhaps, to use a word that is not necessarily kind, but it does get a little bit tired and a little bit stale. How do you suggest people get out of their own way and not be afraid of being themselves, especially in some of those more stoic or traditional type industries? I feel like that is a really hard thing for a lot of people to do.
And Carrie, I feel that, when we take that and you put it against the profile, it's saying to yourself, it's okay to shine. Yep. And also recognizing that you're not necessarily on the profile to brag, but you're on the profile to show who you are and what you do and why it matters, and tell those stories, and hopefully even educate people through that profile. So they want to work with you. They know who you are. They like you, right? So it's allowing yourself that the understanding that you're not doing this to brag. You're not doing it in an arrogant way. You're not doing it in an obnoxious way. You're doing it because you want to open up and you want to attract the right people, right? The people who resonate and vibrate to the type of person you are. And you can't make everybody happy. Those people who aren't happy, they're not part of your tribe. So it's okay to let them go. That, I think, is really important. But then let's take this and pivot it over to the LinkedIn feed. And getting active on LinkedIn, because everything you just said is even more true on the LinkedIn feed, because now we are talking about your career. We're talking about business. We're talking about work. And the thought of taking a misstep so publicly, paralyzes people. And of course it does. Of course it does. But at the same time, we're talking about, really, guys, we're talking about your sweet spot. This is what you do every day. You have something to say, and you're not saying things that are insane or out of line, right? Oftentimes we think that, hopefully, and hopefully maybe you are, and there's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, recognize you have something to say, and LinkedIn is the nicest network out there.
It is. That is true. 100%.
And I'm going to say that we have this fear that we're going to take a misstep, or we have a fear that we're going to have a mistake. We're going to fear that everyone's going to ignore us and no one's going to say anything. But you know what? Those are just the baby steps. Yeah. And truthfully, when was the last time you saw a person make a huge blunder on LinkedIn? Other than the crying CEO from a few years ago. And honestly, that was the best thing for his brand ever. So that was not a mistake by any means.
I know.
It's lovely. It's a lovely place. People want to see you. People want to talk to you. They want to wrap their arms around you and say, welcome to this great network. So I think it's giving yourself that ability to be vulnerable and giving yourself the ability to say, you know what, I have something to say and I'm going to say it.
Yeah. I agree. I think there's almost nothing, unless it is extremely and egregiously and intentionally cruel or offensive, there's almost no mistake you can't make, or you can make rather, that's not recoverable or that is not fixable in some way. And I know it gets challenging and it can feel a little defeating if you are posting or you are out there and you're not getting comments or engagement. It feels a little bit like you're screaming into the void and you must not be interesting. Nobody's listening. But I always tell my clients, that's when you have the greatest opportunity to test the waters. It's just like when I was in the news industry. You don't start in New York City. You start in the small markets where there's not a lot of people watching, and that's where you make your mistakes. So if you're just starting out, it's a great opportunity to test the waters and get a little bit of a feel for what people are interested in and what they're not interested in, what's controversial, what people are willing to engage with. And you do that all as you're building your audience. And then by the time your audience is built, you know exactly what works for you and for them.
I would even go one more step and say, even though you may not see a lot of likes, you may not see a lot of comments, people are there.
They are, yeah.
They are there. There's a lot of lurkers. There's a lot
are
of
a lot of
weirds. I can't tell you how many times my phone rings and people say, I've been following you for the last 5 years. I'm like, I've never seen you on it.
You have no idea, right?
How is this possible? But they're there and they see you and they're watching. So don't automatically assume that the crickets are real crickets. It just means that they haven't taken that step like you have. And we all need a leader to take that first step.
Let me ask you this. Oh, I see Boss who says he is a lurker. Boss, you're not a lurker. You're there occasionally. But let me ask you this. If there are people who are or would characterize themselves as lurkers, how would you advise them to take that first step? And maybe even more importantly, why is it important? Convince them to do so.
You know, if you go to a networking event, if you stand in the corner in the dark shadows, it's not like you even were there. So we've got it. Let's talk about an easy way to get started. And I would say this, don't even worry about posting. Mm-hmm. Don't even worry about posting. Just comment. Yeah. Stop the likes, stop liking things, and instead comment. And really think to yourself, you know what, I'm going to do maybe 1 or 2 comments, maybe a day, maybe a week, whatever you think is something that you can handle. I mean, I recognize we all have business, and anyone who says do 90 comments a day, that's insane. It's just not possible. That's going to devolve into, great work or good idea. And that's not helping the situation. That's just like hitting the like button. But can you do 1? Can you do 2? And really post something that is interesting to you, that makes you smile. Say something. Comment. Right. And just in that alone, that comment, the author sees it, it helps the author. Mm-hmm. It's a way of promoting them. They're going to love you for it. But your people are also going to see it because that's going to travel to some of your close connections, and they're going to see that you commented. So it's almost like a post, but without the same, trumpet and parade down the street.
Sure. Well, it is. I mean, the organic reach on LinkedIn is phenomenal because anytime anybody in your feed or whom you're connected to likes or comments on a post, it shows up in your feed. Adam so-and-so commented on this post, and then it spreads exponentially that way. But I do think there is that perhaps misunderstanding, thinking that the real work in LinkedIn is on the posts. And I like that you're underscoring that's actually not where the real work is. The hard part, the part that takes time and is very intentional, especially so, is the commenting. That's where the networking takes place. The post is like your 30-second elevator pitch if you're at an in-person networking event. And then the comments are all the conversations you have with people around the room. Am I making it a correct analogy?
Yeah. And the way I would even say it is, I almost think it's easier to comment, right? Because now you're just reacting to an idea as opposed to having to come up with the idea yourself. So I think in some ways it's a little easier. It's a little easier for people to put their arms around. But here's the thing. If you start if you start commenting regularly, something's going to happen. And this is almost magical. And I found it when I was writing my book. So when I started writing the For Dummies books, the first edition as well as the second edition, Wiley gives these insane deadlines. So I have to write 30 pages a day. 30 pages a day to hit my deadlines, which is insane. Wow. But every morning I'm waking up and I'm writing and I'm writing and I'm writing from my heart. And at first, Carrie, it was hard. It was so hard. Like I couldn't get in the zone. It took me forever. I didn't know what I was, what to say. But the more and more I wrote, the easier it started to pour out of me. And it was like I couldn't stop after the 30 pages. I wanted to keep writing. And next thing I know, I'm now blogging and I'm writing another book and I'm doing all of these things because I got into the groove. And I know if you can just say, look, I'm going to comment, before you know it, by commenting just a couple times a week, you're going to start to go, you know what? I have some post ideas now, right? Because it's going to start to just come out of you much more naturally.
Yeah, there's a way to bring all of those different elements and repurpose and reuse. And I know we're all looking to do as much as we can with whatever we have. So there's opportunities to use other elements of your writing, post, and incorporate them all together and sort of use that strategy to lift all the different parts of your marketing and your messaging. Let me ask you this. One of the things that I often hear as it relates to LinkedIn content, and I work with some corporations, and I often ask them, are your employees generating content to sort of witness, if you will, for your business or your company online? And oftentimes I hear, not really, or we're not quite ready to take that step, or maybe they're a little bit worried about letting their employees have free reign when it comes to, making them a brand ambassador, if you will, on LinkedIn. How can an employer, an executive or somebody in marketing empower their employees to become that brand ambassador on LinkedIn? It's so powerful and it has so much to offer, but there is not a lot of people who are leveraging it to its full capacity.
Carrie, the world has changed so much since I started my business in 2009. And I started, really being such an advocate for LinkedIn, because back then I used to work on profiles for CEOs. And I'd say to them, let's go right through your organization and let's do all of your employees' profiles and make them look amazing. And the CEOs would be like, no. I don't want them to look good. They'll get poached. Forgetting that all of their employees looked like they were looking for other work. And so they were repelling, great job candidates, and they were repelling their, potential clients and prospects and partnerships. But it's changed. Now it's a totally different world, and companies are constantly saying, Donna, you need to come through and do all of our, you need to do our executive team's profiles and our sales team's profiles, because it really does matter. And also you can also control what you're optimizing for, so you attract the right things, the right opportunities. But going back to what you said, which is very much still along the same lines, it's okay. Maybe our employees look good. How do we get them to get active, and active in a good way? Because for a long time it was like, oh, we don't want them to be active, because if they're active,
somebody will come along and be like, oh, that person looks interesting. Let's see if they're up for a new job. Yeah.
Right. Or they might say, or they might misstep, right? Again, that fear of misstep is just, it's vibrant. It's there. So you have to lead by example. And how do you lead by example? The executive team should be posting. They need to be posting and showing exactly what types of posts they want to do and what makes sense. The company page needs to be posting and putting out content. And whoever is in charge needs to have an active pulse, and they need to be tagging employees and showing them what to do and letting them know that, hey, we want you to share, but we also want you to originate your own content too. And it's okay. It's a good thing because we care about your thought leadership. We care about your brand, and we want to elevate you and your career.
So doing all of the things that we're talking about doing here today, but actually following through and doing them on a consistent basis.
Yeah, and it's the leading by example. It really is, because oftentimes I'll hear this and then I'll look at the CEO. He hasn't posted. Profile hasn't been optimized, not even on LinkedIn. So why would anyone else do it if the guy at the very top or the lady at the very top isn't doing it? They're the ones that are setting the pace.
And so often there's so many almost egregious mistakes on the profile, lack of a banner in the background, which is just wasted real estate, or something that doesn't have anything to do with their business or who they are or how they help people. There's so many opportunities. If you go through those profiles, truly more than just sort of a once over looking at visuals, there's so much opportunity there. Before we go, I have two questions. What would you say to anybody who's listening to take a look at their profile? First thing they need to take a look at, is it their tagline, their profile picture, their background image? What is the first thing they need to look at, and what filter should they be running that element through?
In some ways, right, you look at a profile and it's the imagery that pops, right? That's the first thing you see. There's the background graphic. There's that profile picture. There's the tagline. There's the featured section. Like, these are the things that are really huge, and they definitely catch the eye. So any of those are things that immediately you need to be taken care of. But I would say in this situation, scroll down to the about section. Do you have one? There's a lot of people who just never even bother to put anything in there. Read that about section. Is it from your heart? Does it feel like you're actually speaking to your target audience? Are you really telling them who you are and what you do and how you help and why it matters? Is that being conveyed in that about section? And if it's not, it's time to sit down and really start to think. And so, and again, a lot of this is foundational. As a professional, as an executive, as an entrepreneur, why does what you do matter? And I know it's something silly, but oftentimes we're so busy getting the ball to the other side of the court, we're not thinking about these things. And that's what I've always loved about LinkedIn. It really gets you, it challenges you to be deliberate.
Forces you to understand the why and the purpose. We have a question from Kimberly Klesner. She says she'd love to invite people on her email list to follow on LinkedIn because we post different types of content there. Ideas on the best way to invite people to follow, and does your profile come into play there?
You know, if it's a company page, there's nothing wrong with going in. And it depends on, there's a few criteria that you have to meet, but you get about 250 invites each month to invite your connections to follow your company page. So absolutely do that. I also think it's a good idea that maybe when you build out your content calendar for the month, say to yourself, once a month, I'm going to just say, hey guys, here's my company page. I'd love for you to follow it, and post that out there every now and then. It's also something that, again, go to your email list and let people know that it's there and ask them to follow. All of these things you have to ask. And so those are the things that I would say. And definitely don't just, I don't know if you're a one-person shop or if you've got a bunch of people, but it's something that...
Donna, I wish we had more time with you today. We don't, unfortunately, but thank you so much for being here. And thank you to our amazing audience for being so engaged and asking so many intriguing questions. Before you go, if people are interested in learning a little bit more about you or how you might be able to help them or their company, if there are resources they should check out, where should they go?
Well, I would certainly my LinkedIn profile and follow me and message me. I have open profile, so anyone can message me on LinkedIn. So I absolutely recommend you do that, but also visit my website. It's linkedin-makeover.com. I've got a slew of free resources. All of our services are posted, and I even have a calendar button where you can schedule time to talk to me.
So don't forget to check out Donna Serdula there. Donna, once again, thank you so much for being here. It was a pleasure to have you as a guest.
Thank you.